And they having
Okay,
a
here
pro
we
wrestling
go.
match. Oh,
We're
and we
close.
are live on my screen right there in front of everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to a
Mhm.
very, very special Sunday edition of the Book Asylum podcast. I am Jack Childress. That's my main man, Dungeon Dan. Angel Ramon coming in to us from the beautiful tropical paradise in Puerto Rico. Today on the show, we have a fantastic guest for you.
Oh, we lost him.
And Jack just got knocked out.
How did that happen? He's connecting to audio.
I have no idea what happened just then.
Me either.
That was insane. I have
I'll
no
take
idea.
blame. I probably hit the wrong button or something, even though I haven't touched anything.
Okay. Anyway, soldier on. Here we go. So this week on the show, we have a guest who, first off, actually fooled Dungeon Dan because he thought automatically romance writer. How wrong can a man be? We're about to find out. Megan Stockton, welcome to the show. I can't wait to learn more and more about you today.
Well, thank you guys so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
All right, well, Dan, I want you to start it off because you were quite surprised when you did start looking at her library after
I
thinking what you
was.
thought. What caught your eye?
Well, when I started doing my research, and I saw a picture of Megan come up, it just hit my mind. Hey, romance writer. And then I started looking at her books. She didn't write romance, guys. She's
No.
all mystery, horror, and I can't even think of the third word. No, she writes books that I would read. So this is going to be a fun show. Let me bring one up. There's one I want to start talking about. Unless you guys have questions that you want to ask.
While you do that, me and Megan have a little something we're going to do here to start the show off.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, heard background noise. Watch out for the background noise. It's dangerous.
Yeah,
So,
that was me.
A while back, we lost a really good friend, Javin Bonds, and he had this thing he used to do every now and then just to either, I guess, entertain, maybe gross out, whatever. But he would eat weird foods or hot foods or whatever. And one of the things that he actually got me to do were these little bad boys. And Megan has so graciously offered to do it with me. So I think, in the interest of not, totally derailing the entire show for the entirety of the time, we're just going to do the one. And this is salt and vinegar that I've got going right here.
That's good.
Salt and vinegar.
So on a count of three, one, two, three.
Yum.
Earthy.
Little dry.
Earthy. Jack takes a drink right away.
Yeah, Jack was like, oh no, I gotta wash it now.
Those things will automatically suck the moisture out of your mouth, like, and you're dry. Like, okay. I mean, if I had to survive on them, I could, because honestly, they don't really taste that bad.
No,
I mean,
really.
they got a weird little aftertaste, but yeah, nothing special. But there you go. That was the Javin Bonds Taste Kitchen. All right, Dan, what have you found for us, buddy?
I'm looking for a place to vomit right now. Just give me a minute. All right, let's start this off. Let's talk about Blue Jay. This one it's about a group of horror fans.
Mm-hmm.
You want to give us some stuff?
Yeah.
You want to give us an insight?
It's about three kind of average Joes. They like to watch B horror films, and you can come up with the grossest or worst film, for their guys' night. And then one of them is an internet troll, and he hacks into this guy's account and finds tickets for this immersive snuff experience out in the country. And so the three of them go pretending to be these other people, and when they get there, they realize that it's not an act. So they have to kind of uphold their stolen identities and try to survive this place people go to. They spend money to torture people, or have taboo sex or whatever.
It sounds like it has like a Hostel feel to it. Or
it's my version of Hostel, basically.
Sweet. Loved Hostel.
So what gave you the idea for this one? Obviously, I mean, it could be Hostel, but I mean, what gave you the idea?
Yeah, kind of Hostel. And then too, there was an old theater that I drove by at one point, and it hadn't been in use for years, as far as I could tell. It was somewhere in North Georgia when we were on our way to Florida. And I was like, of all the things people could do with a building like that, you know,
Mhm.
and especially the people who like, you know, they'll rent those places and it always has a different location. So I wanted to do my own version of like a, you know, early 2000s torture porn kind of thing because I always liked those films. So I kind of did my spin on it because I felt like there were things about Hostel that could have been improved, like the characterization and stuff like that. So
Right.
yeah,
The characters were a little shallow for the movie.
yeah, yeah. And so
Okay.
I wanted you to like kind of identify with these guys a little bit. Like they're not necessarily likable characters, but you know, if you can kind of see yourself a little bit in them, then you
Uh-huh.
Right.
Now, in doing that particular story,
know.
what were some of the hardest parts for you to like get to pull together? Because a lot of times you can have a good idea, and then as you start weaving it, it can maybe go off. How did you keep it all just streamlined?
So I am 100% a pantser. So I
Uh-huh.
just start, and I don't always write in order. You know, if I like think of a scene later on, I may write that and then kind of, you know, fill it in as I go. The hardest part was I had a particular way that I thought it was going to end when I started, and then as I started going, that's not where it went at all. And so I just had to like let it take me where it was taking me, even though that's not where I wanted to go. So
Seems to be
it's
the theme with
unexpected.
writers. I planned
Yeah.
this out to the T, and
Yeah.
it still just
Yeah.
took off on its own direction. Even I
It
didn't know how it
always
was going to
does.
end.
It always does.
Well,
It's
that's what a pencil is.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's sort of like the old joke about I'm not really a writer. I'm just the guy that takes the incident report. You know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a pretty good way
Really,
to
that's
put
how
it.
I feel about it. Yeah. I'm a
Yeah.
voyeur, you know, just kind of documenting what you see pretty much.
right, exactly. That's just I mean, so ever since cause I'm really, really new to writing, and
Mm-hmm.
I tell you, I get myself twisted up so easily. When you first started writing, was that something you struggled with too?
No, not really. Once I can get like get a rhythm, I do pretty good. My biggest problem is I'm a very I guess like emotional writer. So if I'm not in the right headspace, I'm not going to get anything done. But I sit down and I either power through whatever I've got going on mentally or emotionally, you know. Once I've sat down and I've started writing, I'm in pretty good shape. I mean, I try not to overthink it. You just got to let it take you where it's going to take you, and
Right.
you know,
Mhm.
go from there. Now, some people do benefit from, you know, plotting out and doing outlines and stuff, but that's just gonna. I am not organized. I don't have an organized bone in my body, and so that's just gonna mess me up more.
Yeah, yeah.
So it really depends on you, you know.
Yeah, well, a good example of somebody who is amazing at plotting things out is actually watching the show right now. It's Alan B. Chessman.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
He's building
Alan,
a
yeah.
sci-fi universe to the point where
Oh,
he can even literally tell you the names of like deckhands on these starships and all the different starships and the smaller
that's
ships and the
that's
landing craft
awesome.
all have names. Like, dude, my
Yeah.
head would
It's
explode.
amazing.
There's no way.
But
No
the
way.
but the funny thing is I'm still waiting for the book to come out.
Yeah,
So if
Well,
you hear me, Annie, man, come on, let's
yeah,
get this book out.
yeah,
Lots of world
exactly.
building to do. That's okay though.
Well,
Yeah.
Megan, when you do your characters,
Yeah.
um, I mean, I'm sure it's the same for Angel and Jack, but do you find that you have to put a lot of yourself into the characters that you really want to pop out in your story, um, or do you just say, you know what, I'm just going to make this guy up and give him his own set of problems?
Yeah, I don't insert myself into characters a lot of times because I don't ever want my own thought processes or opinions or anything to come through in those characters. And that's just my personal preference. Uh, but I will base a character on some of the most ridiculous things. Like I'll be like out in public and notice a stranger has like a weird quirk or something, and then that'll develop into a character. And I may not ever even write that quirk down. Like the reader may never see that, but that's what like gave birth to that character. Some of it's just really random. So I'm constantly taking little notes about things and just kind of seeing where it goes.
Okay.
Cool.
sweet.
So Megan, I wanted to ask you, when did you start writing, and what was your inspiration to begin writing?
Gosh, I've been writing as long as I can remember, really. I mean, like
Hmm.
from, you know, really just I started writing in elementary school, and
Wow.
the first thing that I wrote that ended up being like a full-fledged like story, I was just like 12 or 13, and it was actually a fantasy book. because that's my first two loves are horror and fantasy. And I loved reading Edgar Allan Poe stories and then reciting the stories to my sister verbally, you know. And I would change the ending every once in a while so she didn't know what was coming. And so I liked doing that. And then eventually I just started making up my own stories from the get-go, you know. So early inspirations would have been like, of course, Stephen King and Edgar Allan Poe. As far as fantasy stuff, I'm big into like the Dragonlance books. So all of those, I was big into those. No, there are so many. I read rapidly everything I could get a hold of as a kid.
Oh, okay. Very good.
Heck yeah. Do you remember what the first book was you ever read that just got you?
Oh gosh, one distinct memory I have is, and this is weird, the first Stephen King book I ever bought was actually Dreamcatcher. And I know that seems like a random title, but like I was at Walmart when they still had like the books up towards, they actually had a decent book section, you know, up towards checkout. And I was like going through there looking for a good book, and I picked that one up and got it. That's one of my first that I remember. And then I was a big fan as I got a little bit older. I read Mystic River, and that was the first film adaptation I had experience with. And I actually loved the film. And then other first, I did read a lot of Goosebumps as a kid, and then Fear Street, stuff like that. And I also read a lot of Louis L'Amour and then all of the Dragonlance books. Of course, I read the whole core series plus some of those.
Okay.
Awesome.
I wanted to ask you, when it comes to horror, what is your favorite kind of horror to read? What's your favorite kind of horror?
You're hitting me with the hard ones, Angel.
Angel's own it today.
Yeah, he is.
I got to.
As far as like types of horror, I like I read a little bit of everything.
Okay.
I love extreme horror, especially when it's got like a really solid plot. I love like torture porn. I love a good strong female protagonist. I like a good revenge story. And then I really like genre crossovers that you don't expect. You know, like I like space horror and like fantasy horror and stuff like that too.
Oh, okay.
Cool. We'll just let you know, Alan is eyeballing your website. He says, a great website, Megan. Awesome covers on your books.
No, thank you. Most of my covers are done by Dagan Boyd. Not all of them, but most of them. She's my personal editor and cover artist. So all of my self-published stuff that is solo is her artwork.
Awesome.
All right. Yeah, I mean, to answer my own question, I might to read creature horror and psychological horror.
And I love psychological too. Yeah, when it's especially with a good twist, you know. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, never see it coming kind of things. I love that stuff.
Annie says, "I'm not a stalker." We'll see about. I don't know about that, Annie, but anyway.
There's a couple of stalkers now and again.
I also like that you have 5 books out and none of them are really the same. I notice a lot of people will put out the first 3 books are kind of just a different spin on the same subject. So I'm looking at Ethic right now, and here's where it's a future tale. It says that homelessness is illegal, so now you're tackling a social issue right there.
Yeah.
And since this one's on my, I might want to buy this list. Can you give me a little insight about it, please?
Yeah, Ethic was my debut, and it certainly has horror elements. Everything I do has, I call it like horror infused fiction. So it's all got a little bit, of horror in it, or it's a little bit graphic as far as the violence or whatever. But Ethic is a dystopian novel, so it's set in a future where homelessness is an illegal status. So anybody that's found to be homeless will be put into these programs where they are kind of adopted to a family, and that family pays for them. And then it's supposed to help them get onto their feet. But obviously in a program like that, even though the goal was to help those people, there's a lot of abuse. So Ethic follows a guy who inherited a company from his father and finds out that his father's been selling people into sex trafficking and underground fight rings and stuff like that. And he tries to rescue this guy that he sold into fighting. So
So when you
Huh.
make bad people, you really make bad people in your books.
Yeah, yeah. I try to make them realistic, but they're pretty bad. So
What kind of response did you get to that? Did you get anybody giving you blowback about, the homeless
um
issue?
so not really on the homeless issue. I wrote this when I published it in I think 2019. It's off market right now because I'm getting it edited and stuff. We're gonna get
Okay.
it a new cover. Um, but some of the I had a little bit of blowback from some other topics that are in there because it is a little bit politically driven. I don't think it has an agenda necessarily on its own, but it does bring to light things that could happen given the
Mhm.
situation. So I had a little bit of conflict with those things. I would spoil it if I mentioned those right now. But as far as the homelessness thing, most people were pretty receptive to, that could happen. And it's set up in a way that's not super over the top. So I want it to feel like it's just a couple of steps forward.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's easy to offend people that have a single
yeah.
mind. So,
Yeah.
I figure with a subject like that, you might have gotten some.
I got a little bit about some other parts in there for sure. That it is what it is. It can't please everybody, and I'm not setting out to
Yeah.
offend anybody.
hmm
So
Right.
Just remember this. Like Jeff Thompson once said, you are in the entertainment business. You're there to entertain people.
yeah,
Yeah, unfortunately, not everybody's going to be entertained, but that's them problem, not a you problem.
exactly.
Well, it's also if you can provoke that type of response, then you've obviously written a story deep enough to affect people, whether it pissed them
Mhm.
off or they loved it or it just
Yeah.
got them thinking.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So good job.
Exactly.
Exactly. Mhm.
Well, now for
Now,
anybody
Megan,
that's, oh, go ahead, Angel.
no, I'm sorry. No, what are you going to say, Jack? I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, what advice would you give to anybody who's thinking about writing, other than the obvious, do it? Because that's
Yeah.
always the response is do it. It's like, but what would you tell them to maybe help them not get discouraged early?
It is super easy to be discouraged, and one thing I like to tell people is just because you feel discouraged doesn't mean that you shouldn't. We all feel that way. We all have these moments where we wake up and we're like,
Yes.
what the hell are we doing? Or do people even like what we're writing or whatever? So first, I would say write for you. Don't try to put yourself into a box, and don't write to market. And I know that sounds convoluted because that's smart in some ways. People who write this exact same type of book every time because they're writing to a certain audience that they know they can catch. But if you write for yourself first, and you write whatever you want to, first of all, you're going to be happy because at the end of the day, you've told the story you want to tell. And you will find your people that want to read you because it's from you, not because it's it's a creature feature or it's an extreme horror. It's because it's a Megan Stockton book or whatever. So
Okay, that's very freaking cool. I like that. Because like I said, I've run into that time and time and time again. The old imposter syndrome. It's like
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
it'll creep right up in there before you know it. It's
Yeah.
nuts.
it will.
Dan, get us onto the next book in her list there. We want to get through all 5 of these here today.
I love this. I don't get this much attention. Um,
Yeah, you're the
okay,
man
so
today.
this is where I blew it. When I snapped the photo here, I cut the title right in half, but this one caught my eye because it has to do with 6 Mile Island, and it book is saying that they're going through their normal shutdowns, and apparently something's going to go awry.
Yeah.
We don't want to know that because we don't want spoilers, but at the same time, again, you've kind of attacked something that for some people get a little freaked out, nuclear energy and type of stuff like that. So I already know you didn't obviously do it for that, but what sparked this idea?
So this particular story is actually I've been it releases on February 9th, so it's actually not out yet. And I've been marketing it as kind of if 30 Days of Night was on an island.
Sweet.
And the vampires were more kind of like sirens, so it's oceanic vampires. And then I feel like the vibe is kind of like a cross between American Horror Story and True Detective. Kind of got that vibe going on. So it's not straight up vampires, but it's kind of my version of vampires. So you have a very limited cast of characters that have been stuck on the island because a kid's missing. So, and they have to deal with these creatures that are coming from the ocean during the storm.
So did you go the typical route with your, we'll just call them vampires for now. Did you go the typical route, like, you're going to give us a part where we're feeling bad for their position in death, or did you just go like the stories I like? It's like, no, they're fucking monsters. Who cares?
These are definitely more creature.
Okay.
I will say this. This isn't really a spoiler. They were once human. All of these were once human. And of course, it being kind of like sirens, most of them are sailors that have been lured into the ocean by these creatures. So I guess if you wanted to, you could have a little bit of empathy for the people they once were. But they're manipulative. They're monsters basically throughout the whole book. So
Right. So if you're dealing with, how technical did you go in with the science of nuclear?
I didn't really in this
Okay.
particular thing. Everything's pretty vague. I don't explain a lot about and my other werewolf book is the same way. I don't give you a whole lot of backstory. I don't give you a whole lot of, it's just sometimes I think the mystery is better.
I think the mystery is better. I kind of like stories that just throw me down into it, going,
Yeah.
doesn't matter what happened. This is where you are. Deal with it.
Sometimes I do a little bit of exposition in my books and we'll explain a little bit of backstory, because I know some people do like that. They want to know every little detail and how everything came to be. But most of the time I get a little bit of complaints here and there, like, oh, I wanted to know more about this, or I wanted to know how this came to be. But for the most part, sometimes I think it's better to not know. I mean, most of the time the characters don't know. They're just kind of in the middle of it too. So
that kind of pulls.
Sometimes good to be into the imagination.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. Outstanding.
Well, all right. Well, real quick, Alan asked, Alan said, Megan, I see that you have collaborated previously. How was your experience co-writing? Because he's actually co-writing his thing with someone. So.
Okay. Yeah, I've done 2 collaborations so far, and both of them were really great experiences. I was collaborating with people I'm very close to anyway, so we were real comfortable with each other and we communicated well. The first one I did was with Joshua McMillan, and we did like a nasty little slasher, like villain origin story kind of. It's our version of Michael Myers, more or less. And we kind of sat down and we didn't take turns doing the chapters. I know that's what a lot of people do. But we wanted to make sure we had almost like a third voice. Like, it didn't sound like me, it didn't really sound like him. So we wrote that together. It was a little more difficult, but I think that the product was really good. So we had a good time. I just have to warn anybody that works with me, like, ahead of time. Like I said earlier, I'm kind of flighty, I guess. So keeping me like reeled in to make sure I don't do well with deadlines and stuff. So you just got to keep me on task. So we had a great time. We're writing more together this year or next year. I'm not sure when we'll have it out. And then I just finished the book with Kelvin Allison.
Mm-hmm.
And that one we did take time about. It's set in a hotel for cryptids, basically, where they're put into a program that's kind of like witness protection to keep them safe from man, basically. So they're in this massive hotel that has everything they could ever need, got a grocery store, everything. And we took time about writing the individual rooms. So each of us had a couple of rooms with a couple of cryptids. And then the last chapter we did write together, like, kind of make it, blend it, basically. So I've had a great experience with my collaboration. I've got a couple more coming up, some with people I don't know as well. And we'll see how those go, but I'm excited about the prospect, and I think it's kind of invigorating to write with somebody. They kind of keep you on task and gives you something a little different, so sometimes it's good as a palate cleanser.
The thought of co-writing stresses me out. I can barely keep my own shit in one sock, much less have to deal with another.
I understand.
Well, another friend of the show, Nick Plumridge, my buddy across the pond, has written me into one of his books, which was so cool. He said, "You don't want to get lost in the details, mate. Then again, some readers want more. Some want less. We're truly doomed."
Yeah. And the good thing is there's so many books out there and so many authors with different styles that you can find what you need or find what you want. The thing I just try not to do is I try not to set out to please anybody. because I'm gonna fail. You know, you're never gonna make everybody happy. So
Right.
there'll be people who like your work and there'll be people who don't, but you can always find what you're looking for as a reader. So if I don't have enough details for you, I'm sure I could even probably help you find somebody that's got, goes a little further into their backstory and world building.
Well, I mean, one of the things I love about the future of writing where we are right now, with everybody being able to self-publish, to do the indie publishing route, not have to try to go through a big traditional publisher, is there's more out there now. I mean, some of it's not always good, but I have found way more like really good to really great stuff than not. And, that's why I always enjoy when I talk to the people that you can tell they get it. It's like, this is not a competition. I'm not trying to get them to not buy your book because I want them to buy my book. Well, they're going to buy both books, and
exactly.
Exactly.
And hopefully it's always like that. Since it's books, it's not like you're not filling a void necessarily. It's a constant. Hopefully, it's a constant cycle of purchasing. I mean, I'm constantly buying books. So if I think we're in it together, and you're not going to do yourself any favors by putting everybody else down.
No.
Right.
Nope.
This is where traditional publishing failed too.
See, like behind me is a collection of just all sorts of different writing by different writers. Like, not a single book back there is a duplicate, like one author, two books. It's like every one of those is a different author hanging up behind me back there.
And formula writing, I think, is dead. And I know that was, that's kind of a big thing with traditional publishing, is a lot of times I think they're definitely writing to market, but they have to, because it's very business oriented, and they have a lot of overhead, or I assume they have a lot of overhead in their marketing and putting everything together. But as an indie writer, it's very liberating. We can write whatever we want, and we don't have to worry about formula writing. We don't have to, check all the boxes to fit in that genre.
Think of the pressure that's put onto a writer that actually got a publishing deal. Let's use Stephen King. He's under pressure because they want him putting out more, and he's not necessarily writing what he wants anymore.
Yeah.
And then I've read some Stephen King novels where I wish I had not read that, because they take 8 weeks. They're that thick. When I could have read 5 different books from 5 indie authors that I would enjoyed a lot more.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm glad that the internet has created the community now that we have. Anybody can write, and you have access to millions.
That's right. It's all about networking.
Yep.
It's what it is, and you are the king of that, Angel Ramon.
Yes. Anyway, thank you, Dungeon. But Megan, I got one more question because I have to scoot out of here in a few. I got one more question for you. It's an accountability question. Do you have a daily word count that you want to hit every day?
No. Once again, any kind of
structure,
parameters or structure, I am a creature of chaos. I cannot. So I don't aim for a certain amount of words. I don't even aim for a time frame. I work, I work a regular day job. I do work from home, but I work a day job. It's a production job. So I have stuff I have to have done at work. I have 2 kids that I am homeschooling as of August, and we live on a farm. So I have a lot going on. So I don't beat myself up if there's a day that I can't write or a day that I don't want to write. And I try to tell people, you don't have to sit down and say, I'm going to write 1,500 words today, because if you only wrote 500 words, I think that's a success. But you're going to see that as a failure, if you set out to write 1,500. So, I mean, if you're writing at all, I think that's great. I'm slower. I'm slow as balls compared to a lot of people. But, I get it done eventually, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, as long as you get it done and it's great, hey, that's what counts, right?
Exactly.
Anyway, I got to get going, so I'll see you guys a little later. Thank you,
Megan. Brother man.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Angel, for being here. We really appreciated it.
Yeah, no problem, guys. Take it easy and enjoy the rest of the show.
All right.
Later. All right, got a quick follow-up to the collaboration question from Alan. He says, Megan, did you collaborate through email or by using like Google Docs or something along those lines?
So I use Google Docs exclusively for all of my writing. I'll format in Atticus. I do all my writing in Google Docs. And so with Josh, I think he uses like Word or something, like a desktop program. But we actually ended up, he was happy to move into Docs. So that's where we did everything because it updates live. It's very easy to see all the changes. And so we did all of our work there and it was very easy. It worked very, very well. Kelvin he also uses, I guess, a desktop program. And he wasn't super comfortable with Docs. You know, there's a little bit of a learning curve, you know, if you're not used to the user interface. So we mostly sent the stuff back and forth and kind of went from there. I would open it in Docs, but then I would download it and send it to him either through Facebook or email, and that's how we did that. So I've done it both ways. I prefer Docs when I can, but it's okay to do it the other way. You know, whatever works for you.
Cool. All right. Well, real quick, Jennifer Amato, potato, tomato, amato. Are you fucking kidding me? Says Megan, great outlook on the word count thing.
No, thank you.
Yeah, I hate to admit it, but short of Angel, the rest of us choose to ignore the word count for the most part.
Yeah, I feel like that's the best way to do it, because if you're constantly putting yourself down, you know, because the world is shitting on you anyway. So if you continue to do that to yourself, you need to be happy when you're doing it. So you need to sit down and be like, I wrote 500 words today, or I wrote 10 words today, or I didn't write anything, but I know what I'm doing now. Like I figured something out. So you're moving forward, and that's all. To me, that's all that matters.
And that's a big part of it.
I think about the closest I come to keeping up with my word count is like I might glance at it when I first open up Word and I get ready to start writing, and then I'll write till I'm like, okay, I got stuff to do, or okay, I'm at a dead end, and then I'll look down again and say, okay, well, I went from here to here, so that's cool.
Yeah.
And then I was going about my business.
I kind of keep up with mine. I usually have the little word counter down in the bottom just to kind of see where I'm at. But other than that, I don't keep up with, you know, last week I wrote this many words or whatever. It doesn't stress me out. I know some people need that structure, but not me.
Yeah, Jen said I'm at three words for the week. I judge myself.
That is all right. You know, the end is 2 words. So at some point,
exactly.
it'll be your 2 words and you'll be done. So keep going.
All right, Dan, what next do we have on the list over there, my man?
Oh, okay. You know, I just realized I'm looking at all 5 of your books right now. So Quiet Pretty Little Things, Detective Story. See what I mean, Jack? She's got a different. Yeah.
Yeah. I just write whatever I want. Because that's what makes me happy. So it's all over the place. So Quite Pretty Things is it's like a crime thriller detective kind of thing. I wouldn't really say it's procedural necessarily because it's very character driven, so it's not super technical. But it just follows 3 detectives, a medical examiner, and then also you have the point of view of the serial killer. He's in a small town killing young women. So it's all alternating points of view.
How graphic do you get when you get into your killings?
That one is not super graphic.
Okay.
So like if you read like Blue Jay, which is super graphic, this one's not super graphic. It's a little more mainstream.
Okay, that one I may have to pick up for my mom because she loves all those like murder shows and crime drama things and all that stuff. So this may be one I have to get for her. So
she'd probably like that. I mean, there's some like I would say more than like graphic gore and stuff. It's just a little unsettling the way that the killer views his victims and stuff. But none of it's super graphic. It's really more about the characters and kind of like their arcs throughout the story.
Okay, like with my mom, obviously I wouldn't know like 2 of her favorite movie series of all time are Halloween and Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street. So
yeah,
she can handle the gore. That's not going to bother her at all.
she'll probably like it then.
Cool.
What approach did you take with your detective characters? I notice everybody likes to do their detectives a little bit differently. I mean, we have our cliches, I'm a drunk because of this, my partner got shot in the head type of thing. Did you give him any of the cliche stuff, or did you just plop this guy down going, he's not that messed up?
So the 3 detectives in this story, it's set in a small town, kind of modeled after the town that I live in. So it's set in like small town Tennessee. Almost all of my books, other than 6 Mile Island's a fictional town off the coast of Virginia. Everything else is set in a fictional part of Tennessee. Other Ethic's actually set up north. I lied. But for the most part, I have this little fictional corner. And so one of the detectives is a recovering alcoholic, but he's actually like a great family man. Tries to be kind of a tough guy, but he's not really. Really needs to retire. And then the other guy is kind of like, he puts on the persona of a gruff, tough guy.
Mhm.
He's been seeing a therapist and he loves it, but he won't tell anybody. So there's a lot. It touches a lot on like toxic masculinity and kind of like what people view as being tough. He doesn't want to tell his friends that he's seeing this psychologist and whatever. And then the other guy is a super, super sweet rookie cop that's super smart, but nobody will give him the time of day. So kind of just blow him off, even though he really knows what he's doing and he would make a really good cop.
Right.
I just don't want to waste time with him, basically, especially when everything's high stress because of what's going on. So embraced, I guess, a couple of small characteristics of tropes, but otherwise not really, I don't think.
Awesome. Okay, how many are we in now, Dan? Is that number 4?
We only got one more to go.
Okay, cool.
And this is one we started with, and nobody knows it but me. Let me see. I'm scanning it as we're here. Usually I'm a little more prepared. I'm sorry, Megan.
It's all right.
We'll blame Angel Ramon because he's not here to defend himself.
Exactly.
Okay, this one is a wildlife biologist. That's got my interest right away. So we have a scientist who deals with animal problems. Please tell me this is an animals attack. We don't get enough of these in movies or books.
So his wife has just died very suddenly, so he's been off work to deal with her loss, very unexpected loss. And when he returns to work, the first case he gets is in a small town in Tennessee, and they have a bunch of animal attacks. And the townspeople think that it's wolves, and he tells them there haven't been red wolves in Tennessee in decades, so it's probably not. He thinks it's probably wild dogs, domestic dogs. So he comes in to investigate, and we find out that there's a shit hits the fan after he gets there, and a lot of people are blaming him because he's an outsider, and he's come to small town Tennessee. He doesn't belong there, and he starts trying to investigate and figure out what it is. And that's probably all I'll say about that.
Okay.
That works.
Okay, I am full blown intrigued right now. I'm like, okay, I know 5 books that I've got to add to the old Kindle now. So,
well, and here's the funny thing. We've had the opportunity to interview a lot of authors, and there's always one book in their stack that gets my eye. And this is the first time I can think of. There's all 5 books. Well, 4 books with one coming out. Yeah. So thank you for emptying my wallet. I appreciate that. But I'm sure I'm going to enjoy the story. I was thinking of this really bizarre question for you.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with Pornhub, I promise.
Okay, good.
Okay, here it is. And I'm gonna fuck this up, so bear with me.
I'm ready.
When you write your protagonist, everybody, this is everybody. When you write them, you always give him an obstacle he's trying to overcome, or the person, not he. Have you ever considered writing a character that literally didn't have any problems, or is kind of the mentality? If you guys have ever seen Romero's, what was it, the third one? I can't even. The one where, never mind, I'm just fucking this up. The one after Day of the Dead, where basically they're saying, well, your brother was killed by a zombie. And he goes, no, that was him. That's not me. Didn't affect me at all. Yeah. So have you ever considered writing a character that literally doesn't have any major issues he's trying to overcome? And if you were to, what do you think would be the challenge of doing that? Because it kind of takes away some of what the formula of writing a character is.
It most definitely does. I think the difference, though, is you can have a character who's not internally flawed, and they can still be overcoming an obstacle in the story itself. So they don't necessarily have to have a trauma or, something that's going on. They can be a perfectly happy individual that has never had a bad day, and they don't have any major issues without being like a Mary Sue or whatever they call it, without
Right.
being like a perfect character. It could still just be just a normal person who doesn't have any issues. But you can still drive a story forward. I mean, even like slice of life stories are a thing, where it's just characters going about their day, and that's what a lot of classic literature, I feel like, is. Sometimes it's just a character put into a day in their life, and we just kind of follow them, and nothing crazy happens, and there's nothing, And I do think that for me, that would be more challenging. Most of my characters are heavily flawed. Whether they like the rookie cop that I mentioned in Quite Pretty Things, he doesn't have any problems. He's a good character. He doesn't have any skeletons in his closet. He's a young guy who loves his job. He loves his mother. Now, his dad's not in the picture, but it doesn't bother him. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't have any issues at all. But of course, the story itself presents him with problems that he's having to overcome. But overall, he's a pretty average character that doesn't have any past trauma. But the rest of my characters, for the most part, have either personal demons or something. In Blue Jay, the characters don't seem like they do at first, but as they're put into stressful situations, you start to see things come to the surface. So I guess it kind of depends. Did I answer that question or not?
No, you actually, yeah,
you did.
You answered it better than I asked it.
Exactly.
I don't know if I answered it or not.
It was like you were somehow successful in translating Dananese. Like
Exactly. Dananese. I'm using that one, Jack. Thank you.
well, that's like when people deal with me, being country, which Megan can relate to. It's like you have to be able to speak Jackanese,
because it helps.
Yeah, I'll come up with some oddball words at times, and even I'll stop and go, "What the hell did I just say?" No idea.
Well, I brought the question up mainly because even in horror movies, it's always husband and wife going on a vacation to fix their failing marriage, or even in the book we were just talking about, guy's wife died and he's going to try to work to get through it. So sometimes I would think it'd be refreshing just to have Joe Blow show up in some town and everything goes wrong, and he's like, I didn't sign up for this crap.
Exactly. Yeah, no, for sure. I definitely think it would be refreshing to see some more characters that I think we're so drawn to, like the anti-hero or like the character that's not quite good. You know what I mean?
See, those are my favorites, like Deadpool, Wolverine. I mean, love those characters.
I do too. But it could be fun to have that character, especially in something that has just a little bit of comedy to it. That character that's kind of plopped down in the middle of this shit show, and they're like, not my problem.
Yeah, exactly.
As a writer, we're gonna make it their problem.
All right. Well, Nick Plumard says, following back up what we were talking about with, people's issues. He says we're all messed up. Some just hide it better. Yeah. And then I think Alan's asking a question, I guess, for you: dialogue-driven stories or descriptive with filler?
I don't do a lot of fluff, and I'll tell you why. I mean, I have so, and nobody knows it but me, is my closest thing to like purple prose. So there's some just like descriptions that are just a little, there's a little bit of flavor. Didn't necessarily need it, but it's there. And sometimes I'll do that when I'm wanting to capture, a lot of times more than like anything, I'm trying to capture a vibe. Like I want you to feel the things versus showing you the things. I want you to feel a certain way about it when you're reading it. And sometimes I do that through visuals or through like the setting or whatever. But I do a lot of dialogue. I feel like compared to a lot of people, a lot of the stuff that I wrote in, and you could think of this as a compliment or an insult, but it's all about just the fact that I do a lot of dialogue. When I was in college, I took 2 creative writing classes. Otherwise, I was a vet tech major, so it was all science classes. But I took those as electives, and my teacher said that all of my stuff felt very Tarantino because the people were constantly talking, and sometimes the dialogue was not relevant to the story. But it makes the people feel real to me, because we're not always talking about important things. And
right.
So that was something that I do a lot is my characters will have conversations that I hope feel authentic and give you insights into their personalities without me telling you, oh, he's, whatever, he's an asshole. You can see that through the conversations that he's having or whatever.
Right.
So I go back and forth between, heavy description and lots of dialogue, but I don't have a ton of fluff. I try to keep everything pretty tight and trim.
So the good answer is a little bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
To me, dialogue is a very key thing, and being compared to Tarantino is not a bad thing.
No.
Yeah, his dialogues can be excessively long, but in the end, it's all pertinent to what's going on. I read a lot of books where the dialogue is just so weak it pulls me away from the story and it's hard to finish. And then I've had other ones where the story itself was good, but it was the dialogue that kept me involved.
That's honestly one of my biggest complaints with a lot of books that I read is the dialogue either doesn't feel authentic or it's just clunky. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's if the writers just aren't really comfortable writing dialogue, because a lot of people aren't, or if it's just them trying to force a little bit of exposition, like they're trying to force information out of the characters that way. I'm not really sure what it is, but that is something that I've noticed in a lot of books. And I mean, tons of people are really good at it, but as far as like something I see more often than I think I should is bad dialogue.
Some writers have really got the dialogue down to where the characters are all the more real because they're talking just like, the three of us are right now.
Right. Yeah.
It's all natural. The information is being given to the reader, but in such a way that you're literally just standing on the side watching two people interact, trying to figure out whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, dialogue's a key, and it's a story killer if you don't give it at least a good shot.
Yeah.
Okay, Alan Chessman, staying on the dialogue thing. He says, cool. The project my friend and co-author and I are currently writing is better than 85% dialogue that drives the plot. I've had beta readers who thought it was too much dialogue. So I assume you probably, like you said, ran into stuff like that along the way.
Well, my personal opinion, sci-fi needs a lot of dialogue because you're in a world that doesn't even exist. And the only way you can understand that world is what you learn through communication of your characters.
Yeah. And I mean, people talk. I mean, think about how much you run into somebody in the grocery store. I was actually, just before I came here, my daughter and I went to get food. Some woman, I don't know, she knew us. I hope she doesn't watch this. She's going to watch this. Because she told me she saw my daughter.
You're outed.
On Facebook. I don't recognize. I know her, but I don't know her. And she sat there and talked to me for like 30 minutes while we waited for food. We talked about just whatever. And, and so, I mean, like, you talk to people all the freaking time. And there's no reason that if you want your books to be realistic or your world to be realistic, people are going to communicate and they're going to talk about stuff that's, not necessarily, I guess, what you could consider at face value important. And you are going to have people who think you have too much dialogue. You're going to have people who think you don't have enough. It's just going to be how it is. So I think it's good when you have I have a set of beta readers that are like, I use over and over and over again. And I always add more every year. I'll always be like, hey, who wants to read this? And I'll pick some random people. But then I have like my core of readers who give me a little bit of everything. Like I know they like more of this and they like more of that. And that's important to be well-rounded. You don't want to pick people who are going to like everything that you give them. So you want to make sure you're picking people who are going to give you a full picture, an unbiased look at your stuff. So it's good to get negative feedback. If they like everything you give them, they're either lying or you've not got the right set of people. So that's fine.
Beta readers are important.
Very.
I've handed my works off, and when I give it to a beta reader, it's like, now show me everything that I can't see, because when you're writing it, it's in your head.
Yeah.
You're going to blow right past something that's a key, miss, and they'll pick it up for you.
Well, and pacing is a big thing that I worry about when I'm writing, because I feel like, you're like in the forest and it's like, this feels like I've been writing this forever. Or it feels like it didn't take me long enough to write that. And then when someone's reading it, they get a much better grasp on your pacing. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you're aware of things that you're not telling the reader, and you just assume that they're going to know. or you just assume that they're going to pick up on that. And so I think they're incredibly valuable. And even if you don't get to fix it on the book that they're checking out, depending on what portion you've given them at what point in time, you can always start adjusting it on your future work. And it's just going to make you better every time.
Right. Now, do you use ARC readers as well for when you have that final version?
Yeah, I usually do. There have been times that I try not to set pre-orders and stuff like that because, once again, deadlines, I'm not good with it. So sometimes I'll end up getting behind and I won't have time to send out those. And I should. Like, that's shitty of me. That's a me problem. But most of the time I have a Patreon, so those people get to read as I write. So they're seeing the raw version. And so I'm getting live feedback from those people, which is amazing. And it's also motivating too, because they're waiting, on what you're giving them. And then once it goes through my editor, I do try to get this is what it's going to look like version, your arcs, and send those out too, and kind of get feedback from people at that point as well.
Never thought of the Patreon read as you do it. That's a good idea.
Well, my patrons love it. They really, really like that. I think that might be one of the, other than we have a super unhinged group chat, but other than that, I think those are some of their favorite perks, is, hey, I'm going to upload a chapter every week, or I'm going to upload 5 chapters as I finish it, and you guys can read it. And they're seeing it in its raw form. They're seeing it unedited. And I also give them the opportunity to, since I use Google Docs, I'm like, hey guys, I'm writing. If you want to pop in and watch, they can pop in there and kind of see how you work. And that's motivating for you too, because you got people.
Yeah. That's kind of terrifying though.
It is a little bit
to have somebody reading your raw stuff.
Well, not like the. Well, see, I know a lot of people do multiple drafts, but I'm one of those people who I write a single draft, my editor edits it, and then we publish it from that point, unless there's major changes that need to happen. I can't do multiple drafts on my work. Like, I just can't do it.
That's not us, Jack.
No.
And that's me. It's not the best way to do it. The best way to do it is to make it the absolute best you can, polish it as much as possible. But I can't read back over my own stuff much. It makes me sick. Disgust myself.
Yeah, it's almost like an OCD thing with me. It's like, all right, like 4 lines, and then I go back and reread it. And well, no, in full honesty though, part of that too though is ADD, because I'll be writing and writing and writing, and then I'll be like, where am I?
Yeah. So I do that.
Just get straight lost. But yeah, see, Angel with his Patreon does that too. Like his King Mino series and the Pina Coladas and Rats. Like every day that he finished a chapter, he would post it, and it'd be there. And like I said, unedited, all the flaws, everything's there. But still, it's like a thing for the fan gets to go check it out before it ever even gets.
I'm sure they love it.
I think too, getting to see the work that goes into completing a manuscript. Like, this is what we have. It gives them an appreciation for our editors who work incredibly hard and aren't given enough credit for what they do for us. Like, they're going to go through and they're going to fix everything, all the problems we have. Then we got to go through and we got to format it. And then so they get to they have a better appreciation, I feel like, for the process, seeing what we do and how long it takes us and what we're going through. And I like bringing them in. I tell them all the good, bad, and ugly. Like, if I have something that didn't pan out for me, I'm like, hey, I wanted to do this, and either I fucked up or something else happened, And so I share everything with them.
That's so awesome. Cool.
All right, funny line here from Alan, talking about the lady you just spoke to for like 30 minutes. said, now that lady is one of Megan's future characters.
She's really sweet. I can't, like, her name. I can't, no. She asked me about my mom. She knew my daughter. I don't know.
Well, that's like earlier, I had to take Mom to go pay a bill, and the place didn't open for like another 20 minutes. So we got out. We're in a rental car, so we can't smoke in it. So got out of the car, and we're just standing there freezing our butts off. And this old guy just walks up. He's like waiting for the place to open too. And next thing you know, they're talking about, do you remember when Gallatin used to have this old bowling alley? And you remember, that old place down the street over there? And I'm just standing there like,
what's happening?
I'm getting back in the car. It's cold.
Yeah.
But yeah, they just out there just talking. It's like you said, you just run into people at random,
Yeah.
and you wind up with these random conversations. And now, have you ever actually had a character come to life because of something like that?
Because of like a random conversation I've had.
Yeah, yeah, or just seeing somebody, or even like ear hustling a random conversation.
Yeah, I mean, certain aspects. Yeah. Like I said, sometimes it's like people I'll see like them do a little something, like they'll have a little quirk or a little mannerism that they do, and I'm like, for some reason that's like triggering a character, you know. But sometimes like things people are wearing, or I have probably completely stolen like small talk conversations from people that I've heard out in public or whatever. Just literally anything that I'm hanging on for whatever reason, I'll write it down and I may or may not end up using it later. And sometimes it just inspires something else. It's not always that's what I'm using. Sometimes it's just, it becomes something completely different.
Okay, and Dan should not be the least bit surprised by the question I'm about to ask, and this will probably be my last question. But I've been saving the best for last. Somehow, I think Dan already knows where this is going.
I already know.
Have you ever written people into any of your books?
I actually haven't. I do name characters after people. Mostly, like I have named characters after people in my Patreon, or friends. I used to name characters or streets or towns or whatever after like if beta readers like completed a book and gave me feedback, I'm like, hey, I'm gonna name a character or a street or something, after you. But even then, like it's not that person, I have a friend named Logan, and she was one of the first people who read Ethic for me when I was, and so there is a character. I was like, who do you want to be? And she was like, I want to be some red shark that gets killed. Like he's there for like 2 seconds, So I named the character Logan after her, and he ended up becoming a major character, which is not my intention.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, she's female, Logan's a guy. They're not the same in personality. They're not like, but that's just kind of like a little Easter egg for her. I've never written a character that is an actual person, into other than like, a celebrity mentioned or something,
Okay. Well, as Dan knows, over the almost 3 years now that we've been doing these things, I'm in double-digit books by different authors in all sorts of different roles. And most recently, if I could get my finger to point right at it, the Wild-Eyed Southern Boys 3 has the Sasquatch character and Rue, who are the good guys, standing on one side of the cover. Facing them is me and a Rougarou looking back across, about to square off with each other. And I'm just every now and then, I've got a poster of it over here, and every time I look up at it, I'm just like, I cannot believe that's me.
It's not, Jack.
Really
it's
cool.
a drawing.
It's a drawing of me. And he's actually bigger than me because he spent 10 years in prison, so he's buff. I am definitely not that.
Are you saying you're aspiring to be in prison for 10 years so you can look like your character?
We can find her.
Or at least find a spouse or something. I mean, man, hell, it could be a nice vacation after everything else. I mean, geez. All right, well, guys, this hour shot by. I mean, it is absolutely flown by.
Too fast.
Way too. Always does. Always does. Well, guys, what I always like to do every show is go a little round robin around the room. Now, since Jen's not here and Angel split early, I'm going to go ahead and let you know you can find Angel Ramon on Amazon. He's got his historical fiction under Angelus Maximus. You can find Jen under J.L. Folk on Amazon. You can also find her and Angel on Facebook. Go friend them up, and chat them up, see what they got going on. And our buddy Richard R. Rose, he has the Wild-Eyed Southern Boys series, which is absolutely fantastic. It's also on Amazon and Audible. All 3 books that are out now are already recorded. You can get the Audible for him. He has a fantastic narrator, which is key to getting audiobooks done. And dang, Dan, see, there's a question we didn't ask. Were any of your books
thinking
on
the
Audible?
same thing.
Yeah, actually, I've got Blue Jay was recently put out by Front Night Audio, so they produced it, and then I've got Quite Pretty Things and Ethic, the old version of Ethic, are both on there and narrated by Dave Drew Hull, who's a friend of mine, and he does all of my narration, and he is working on And Nobody Knows It But Me right now.
Cool. Well, I guess I know what I'll be looking for when that next credit drops.
Yep.
Got to get in on that. All right, Dan, let everybody know what you got going on, man.
Still writing. You find me on Amazon, Facebook, right here on the Book Asylum.
Every single Saturday,
Every single and Sunday sometimes.
Sunday sometimes. Sunday. All right, Megan, break it down for everybody. If they want to get an audiobook, they want to get a paperback, they want to get an ebook, whatever it is they want to get, if they just want to get an autograph, how can they do that?
I have a website, meganstocktonbooks.com. The best place to reach me is on Facebook. You can either message me on my personal account or on Megan Stockton Author. And then if you're interested in my Patreon, you can find it at the Bad Book Cat Club, which is on patreon.com.
Very cool. Well, guys, thanks for everybody showing up today. It was a really good time. Like I said, I think you've got 2 new fans right here in me and Dan. So
pretty sure, yeah.
Just get ready for those reviews. And we do write reviews, so don't worry. We're not going to be like, we read it. Did you like my book? Yeah. Did you write a review? I liked your book. No, we will. You will get your review. That will happen. That's just how that goes. Well, guys, it was another fun show. Until next week, we will see you then. Now Dan scrambles to try to get us off the air.
All of a sudden I remember I'm the one doing this.